Welcome back, geometry. We are still working with congruent triangles, and in this example, we will be looking at a problem that does not already have a diagram drawn out for us. Okay, so given triangle GRA is congruent to triangle PES, and then they tell us the measure of GR, RA, GA, PE, ES, and PS, they want us to find the values of X, Y, and Z. Okay, guys, you've heard me say this before. If there is no diagram drawn for you, draw one for yourself. Let's start off with this statement. We're told triangle GRA is congruent to triangle PES. So let's draw two triangles. And I'm going to call this one GRA. And I want us to remember really quickly that we started at this vertice and then we went to R and then we went to A. Okay, because when I draw my second triangle, I want to follow that same pattern. So let's do triangle, and I'm going to name this triangle the same way that I did GRA. So I started in the bottom left-hand vertex. So I'm going to start with P, and then I'm going to go to the top vertex. This is E, and this is S. Now, the reason I'm doing that, and I'm going to erase these arrows, the reason I'm doing that is so that this way we can clearly see the corresponding angles and the corresponding sides of our congruent triangles. So now that I've gone ahead and drawn my triangles that they're corresponding, I can easily see that angle R is congruent to angle E. And we can see that in our statement as well because R is the second letter in this name, in this triangle name, and E is the second letter in that triangle name. Angle G and angle P are congruent because G is the first letter here and P is the first letter here. And then angle A is congruent to angle S because A is the last letter in GRA and S is the last letter in PES. Okay, so whenever you guys are drawing diagrams for yourself, make them easy, kind of like what we did here. Okay, so now let's mark our congruent sides since it looks like we're given side measurements. So I want to mark up my sides with tick marks. Okay, so let's see. GR would be congruent to PE. So I'm going to mark that with a single tick mark. RA would be congruent to ES. And I'm going to mark that with two tick marks. And then GA would be congruent to PS. So I'm going to mark that with 3 tick marks. Okay, now I've got my congruent sides. The next thing I want to do is label my diagram with any information that they give me. And they give me quite a lot of information. So they tell me the measure of GR. So GR is 2x plus 3. That's what that side length measures. They tell me RA is 4y plus 2. They tell me GA is 2x plus y. So I'm going to label that side. They tell me PE is 15. They tell me ES is 6y minus 8. And finally, they tell us that PS equals Z. Okay, so now I've got my triangles labeled. I can start solving for all of my variables. So since I've got a couple, like 3 different variables, some of us might think that we want to use a system to solve this. We can set up a couple equations that would help us start solving for these letters. So let me zoom out here a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start making some congruency statements with our segments. We know that GR is congruent to PE. We mark that on our diagram. We know that RA is congruent to ES. That's also marked on our diagram. And we know that GA is congruent to PS. So now that I've got my congruency statements, our congruency statements can actually help us set up our equations because what we're going to do is replace the letters with the expressions that we were given. So for example, instead of writing GR, I'm going to replace that with 2x plus 3. So 2x plus 3 because that's what they tell me GR measures. And I'm going to set that equal to PE. And PE, they told us, was 15. So bam. I now have an equation that allows me to solve for x. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. And I get 2x equals 12. Divide both sides by 2. and we get that x equals 6. So I've solved for one of my variables. Okay, let's keep this up. So now I want to replace RA with the expression 4y plus 2 because that's what they tell me RA measures. And I'm going to replace ES with the expression 6y minus 8 because that's what they tell me ES measures. Now I can solve for y. Everything is in terms of y. Okay, so I want to move all of my variables to one side. I want to subtract 4y on both sides because I want my y values to stay positive. Scroll down just a little bit. Okay, so I end up with 2 equals, let's see, 6y minus 4y. That gives me 2y minus 8. Now I want to move the 8 to the other side. Add 8 on both sides. And I end up with 10 equals 2y. Divide both sides by 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5, so y equals 5. Okay, and then in that final congruency statement, we're going to set it up the same way that we did the others two, which means we're just going to replace the congruency statement with an equation. So instead of writing GA, well, they tell me GA measures 2x plus y equals, and then they tell me PS measures Z. Well, I've got 3 different letters here. But what's nice is that I've already solved for x and y, so I can substitute those values in. So I'm going to substitute the 6 in for x, so 2 times 6. Instead of writing y, I'm going to write 5 because that's what we figured out y was. And that's going to help us find z. So from there, we can follow order of operations. 2 times 6, that gives us 12. 12 plus 5 equals z. So 12 plus 5, this is 17, so z equals 17. Let's go back to the original problem and make sure that we've answered what they wanted us to find. So the problem read, determine the values for x, y, and z, and we've gone ahead and done that. X equals 6, y equals 5, z equals 17.